What secret was revealed when cleaning out the home of a deceased family member? Before we start with the first story, please hit a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Number 10. Grandpa did drawings of the faces of the people he World War II. Nobody knows why, but my grandma said he had a lot of guilt over the things he saw, so my guess is he didn't want to forget them, or didn't feel like he should be allowed to forget them. Reply. My grandfather, who was in Italy on Omaha and in the Bulge, did something similar. Every evening before bed, he'd visualize the German soldiers he had killed and would say prayer for each, and ask for forgiveness from them. In a way, I think he felt feeling the pain of remembering them every day was his penitence. Number 9. That my dad hid money all over the house, not huge amounts mind you, but $60 here, $120 there. Felt like a bit of a scavenger hunt when we were cleaning out his stuff. He was always a bit of a sneakily generous guy. Always gave me and my brothers a secret handshake with money tucked in his palm when we'd go back to school after a weekend home, etc., so wouldn't be surprised if he'd done it intentionally. Made us smile every time we found some. I think the final total was somewhere around $800. I deal with deceased estates as my job and have to go into houses to collect paperwork, etc. One home of an elderly lady I found £15,000 in cash stuffed all over the place, just in envelopes and stacks of open post. Another house I went to recently, I found almost £9,000 in various envelopes. Number 8. Had my father committed suicide and did not die of a heart attack. That he was a cop under investigation for theft and took the quick way out. Reply. I found out my grandmother committed suicide about 20 years after the fact. I had been 5 when it happened. All through childhood, I was led to believe she died from cancer, and that my grandfather was traveling. In fact, he was in and out of jail for a year from drink-related incidents following his wife's suicide. Thankfully, he's been clean and sober for the last 20-plus years. Number 7. My parents were getting back together. Dad died at 50 of a heart attack. Mom was devastated. Her health declined rapidly and she died at 49 3 months later. I cleaned out both their homes and found calls, texts, and love letters. They wanted to be together again, but didn't want to put their kids and grandkids through a reconciliation until they were confident it'd work out. I knew she'd be devastated. They had been together almost 30 years, but they were 2 years divorced and casually seeing other people. They seemed to be thriving apart. So it was a shock when the grief was so strong that it took all the life out of her. She died of cancer, but the doctor also diagnosed her with failure to thrive, brought on by the loss of my dad, and said that it may have been possible for her to live longer and even receive treatment if the failure to thrive hadn't taken everything she was before her cancer diagnosis. The only thing worse than losing my dad was watching my mom live without him, so at the end of the day, I'm grateful she didn't live without him for long. She never would have had peace here again. She found her peace with him on the other side. Number 6. Birth certificate for a half-brother I didn't know anything about. ETA, his name is Daniel. I tear up occasionally when I hear Elton John sing Daniel. He is 14 years older than me. He was adopted by his stepfather when he was 3. My dad only saw him a couple of times. He was married to his mom, but they divorced after a few months and she took Daniel and moved across the country. He knows he has 1/2 sibs but doesn't want to meet us or have a relationship. The weirdest thing about it, he is a carbon copy of my dad. Bonus surprises, I never knew my dad was married before my mom. I also found out that my mom was married before my dad too. No kids, apparently her first hubs used my mom as his beard. He married her and 3 days later moved to Hollywood with his best friend to become a star. They got divorced on their 1-year wedding anniversary. Number 5. Many years ago, I went with my dad and aunt to clean out my great-uncle's apartment after he passed away. He was never married, no kids, and lived, we thought, very poor. Tiny apartment with a twin bed, table, and chair, a couple of pots and pans, a couple pants and shirts, and that's basically it. As we stripped the bed and moved the mattress, we were shocked. He had hundreds of stacks of $10 bills wrapped in rubber bands under his mattress. They were all $10 bills. He lived during the Depression and didn't trust banks apparently, but we had no idea he had so much cash. He never spent it on anything. Just bundled it and saved it under his mattress. Some of the bills were so old and yellowed, it equaled thousands of dollars. We had no idea. Number 4. Mine was confirmation of a wild story. My grandfather served in Korea. For years, there was a tall tale about how he won a house in Korea. Unsure how to phrase this politely online. That it included the family who owned it and essentially anyone who worked there in a game of poker. That when he returned home after a few years of receiving letters and small payments, my grandmother told him to give the ownership back to the family. I don't think anyone really believed him when the story was told. Over and over again, my grandmother died when I was young, so couldn't ask her if it was true. When he passed away and we were cleaning out the house, we found the letters from the family and the letter from the lawyer Gramps used to officially return ownership. My grandpa owned a pleasure house in Korea is a sentence that's hard to say. Number 3. My dad was in hospice at home for a couple months before he died of lung cancer, and when I went to clean out his house I found that he had already sorted and packed away most of his personal treasures in couple storage bins. It was heartbreaking all over again thinking of him sitting there packing up his own life, knowing it was coming to an end. Reply. My uncle committed suicide, and when I went to his apartment to clean it out, I saw that he'd given it so much thought. He'd given away all his valuables. Family pictures were sorted by years, stacked neatly on a table. He'd gone to the bank and cleared out his accounts and safety deposit box out, assuming he gave the money away. He signed his paid-off car registration over to my aunt, the youngest sibling, and left a note to give her the keys, and all his good clothes, suits, dress shoes, dress shirts, were packed up for donation so that someone down on their luck might be able to wear them to an interview. It was clean and organized, which wasn't really his style. His place was always cluttered and lived a messy lifestyle. He was the life of the party, he was always popular and well-liked and fun, and he must have been so sad. He was only 54. Number 2. Closest I got is that I think one of my uncles, one of my dad's brothers, may have been trans or at least a cross-dresser. If I started listing all the reasons that I always assumed over the years that he was not straight, I'd be here all day. TLDR, I always figured he was either gay or bi and closeted, and I know my mom thought so too, and remaining closeted made sense to me as our family was largely conservative. He passed way back in 08 when he was only 61, and I was only 32. When we were cleaning out his things, my mom and I found several eyeshadow palettes, some lipstick, and setting powder, all obviously used, and no, there's no chance it belonged to anyone else. I don't think she ever pointed it out to my dad. I still have some of the eyeshadow palettes tucked away somewhere. I wish he'd taken better care of himself. I wish I'd had the proverbial balls to just ask him about it. I know that he didn't hold the same prejudices in that regard as much of my family did, and he knew that I didn't either. But I never wanted to ask directly because I never wanted to put pressure on him. I know how our family was/is, and we were still in the age of don't ask/don't tell. I've used he/him throughout, because that's all he ever openly identified as, and I'll never truly know one way or the other, but I will always hold some regret that he may well have died without ever having been able to be open about who he was. Number 1. I'm African American and my husband is white. My father faced a lot of prejudice during his lifetime, and I was terrified of telling him that the white guy I'd been on a date or two, or that was getting serious with. The first time I brought my now husband home, my dad was courteous but distant. Miraculously, by the second time, my father literally gushed all over my husband. Even my siblings were shocked. When we got married, he was beaming. It was odd, but I was just happy my husband had won him over. My mom died in 2014 and my father in 2021. When my siblings and I went to clean out the house and his safe along with other important documents, we found letters that my husband had written to my father 24 years before about how he felt about me, how he was serious about his relationship with me, how he was planning to go to law school. He's an attorney now. How he respected that he'd gone through so much in his lifetime, and eventually how he loved me and how, with his blessing, he was going to propose. My husband never told me he'd written my father, and my father never told me he'd been corresponding with my husband. It was so emotional finding those. I still tear up when I think about it. When I got home, my husband finally showed me the letters my father had written back. All right, folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of these stories, you can smash a like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories every day. I'll see you in the next video.